So I want to start by saying thank you everyone for joining. My name is Cody Armstrong, and also on the line is Neil Cook. Neil's going to help me today with showing you real-time collaboration in Onshape. And so what we've done is put together just a small presentation of how you can share your document and collaborate in real time in Onshape. As I always say with these webinars, we really encourage you to ask any questions that you'd like. So feel free to type in any questions in the questions dialog in the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll do our best to stop and address the questions from time to time. So real-time collaboration on Onshape, sharing your documents and working together with multiple users inside the same document. That's what we're going to focus on today. Real short webinar here today. So again, ask any questions that you'd like. Now, before I get started with the topic of the day, I do like to mention just a few things about Onshape in general. And the first is our mission statement, and that is getting everyone working together with CAD on any device, anywhere. And of course, this correlates very well with our topic today of working together, working collaboratively with other users, whether they're in the same room or across the country. So, working together with anywhere on any device is a big part of our mission, and this means iPads, iPhones, Android tablets, Linux, Mac, Windows, Chromebooks. You really have accessibility from anywhere. So that's our mission. Now, the few things I'd like to point out about Onshape in general, that we do consider ourselves professional 3D CAD. And when you think of professional 3D CAD, it's generally three things: parts, assemblies, and of course, drawings. And we do have all three major pieces that make up a professional 3D CAD system. What's unique about Onshape is how quickly we evolve. Unlike a lot of traditional CAD systems that have one yearly update, Onshape updates out roughly every 3 weeks. And roughly every 3 weeks, you're going to see new functionality adding. So we're evolving at a very quick rate. Some other things I like to point out, version control is built in, which we're going to go over a bit later on when we talk about branching and so on. But you don't have to have a separate data management solution or something to that effect to manage versions of your CAD models or your Onshape documents in general. Version control is built into the core of Onshape and was thought of from the very beginning. Now, some other important aspects that I like to mention: if you've come from another CAD system, we can read and write a lot of the common CAD formats that are out there. So, STEP, IGES, Parasol, SOLIDWORKS Native, a number of different formats that we can import and export. So it makes Onshape a great tool to work alongside other CAD systems, or if you have a library of CAD data, you can import that data into Onshape. Even DXF and DWGs can be imported as well, and even edited natively. So read and write common CAD formats, a big thing that I always like to point out for those new users. The last thing, and of course ties very much to what we're talking about today, and that is entirely new methods of collaboration. One of the biggest benefits to Onshape is its collaborative benefits. The fact that it's a cloud-based application means that multiple people can work on the same document at the same time. Right? I can communicate with users in the same document. I can even see their screen in real time. So there's lots of benefits to working collaboratively in Onshape. And I'm going to go through an example of just a few of them. And they're relatively simple things to show, so we'll go through them pretty quickly. So what we're going to talk about here today, well, the goal, of course, is to explain collaboration. And the first step to explaining collaboration is sharing your document. So I'm going to walk you through sharing the document and all the various things that you can do once you've shared your document. So do my best to explain collaboration and in general how it works, but we're going to show you examples of adding comments and the comment workflow that you might take if you're working with multiple users. And follow mode, another big benefit to sharing your document and collaborating with those, is the ability to see their screen in real time. Now, the last thing I want to mention, is just a brief mention at the end of the webinar, is branching. And this is an entirely different kind of process and workflow, but it's definitely something that a lot of users ask for. So I'm going to walk you through an example of just how I might create a branch and why I might do that. As I always say, throughout these webinars, I do my best to answer any questions. Neil's on the line. He can answer any questions that you have as well. So feel free to type those in as we're going along. Okay, so I'm not a big fan of slides. We're going to jump right into the content here this morning. And what I'd like to do is jump into a blank part. And as I mentioned before, what I'd like to do is share this document, and both myself and Neil, what we're going to do is work together to build a few parts with contextual relationships to each other. So let's just say, given this a hypothetical scenario, that both myself and Neil are going to build some various flanges for a bevel gear assembly. And the housings for these bevel gear assemblies come from another vendor. Maybe they come from McMaster Carr, maybe they've come from the vendor and they've sent us Parasolids. Now they've sent me the bottom half and Neil the upper half, and we need both to get them working together. So the first thing I do before I invite Neil or do any of that is I'm going to import my Parasolid that it was sent to me by my vendor. I'm going to go to the bottom left, Create tab, and choose Import, and we'll browse, in this case, to the Parasol. Now, as I mentioned before, this is the bottom casing. Neil has the top casing. So this is just the first half of the assembly. Now I need to invite Neil to the document. Now, of course, Parasolid automatically is translated, so there is my bottom casing. But now I need the other half. And so in this case, what I'm going to do is, rather than sending an email to Neil and asking him to send me the Parasolid, I can share the document with him. And it gives him instant access to this document. Now, the first thing, of course, with all collaborative efforts is sharing. So share in the top right corner, you'll see a big blue button here. I hit share, and a share dialog pops up. If you're familiar with Google Docs, it's very similar workflow. You hit share, you enter their email address. Even if they don't have an Onshape account, you can share your document with them. We create an account on the fly and then send them a link. So even if the user doesn't have Onshape, feel free to still share the document with them. It doesn't really add much it doesn't add much friction to the process. They just have to fill out a few simple questions, and then they're looking at your document. So very easy to share your document, again, even with those that haven't used Onshape before. Now, in this case, I punch in Neil's email address. I define his permissions, a very important step. Again, very similar to Google Docs. What kind of permission do I want to give Neil in terms of access to this document? Now, he can edit and share, a very important distinction, right? The ability to also share this document. He can just simply edit, or he can view and comment, right? The ability to add comments but not edit the model, right? And then just simply view. So you need to go through and define, what is it that I want this person to be able to do? If I'm just sharing it with them so that they can take a look at it, just view it, view permissions will do just fine. But in this case, both myself and Neil are going to work together on this part. So I'm going to give him edit and share permissions. Okay. Now, one last thing I want to mention about sharing before I actually share is the tabs here. You have the ability to share with multiple users at once in the form of teams, and then companies, a very similar aspect. You have the ability to share with many different people at once. So if you work in teams of multiple users, you can automate this process. You don't have to share one at a time. So I define the permissions, I hit the big share button, and they get instant access to the document. So there's no viewers that they have to install. I don't have to attach anything to emails and then send it. There's no back and forth translation, between us with, attachments to emails. They just simply click on the link and they're in the document. So one of the first things that I want to point out are what we refer to as the social cues. And you may have noticed it here in the top right corner. There's now an N indicating Neil is now in the same document as I am. So he just clicked a link and now he's looking at the same thing I am. The important thing there, again, no installs, no separate applications have to run. He just simply clicks a link. Some things I want to point out is, notice that as he changes tabs, it gives me feedback. So notice now that he's in the top casing. So he's imported his Parasol already, and now he's flipped over to that tab. You'll see the little N here. So you get feedback. And just jumping back real quickly to my slide on social cues, you'll see throughout Onshape various little cues of not just where the person is, but what they're doing. So you'll see the little C icon I have there, the N icon before the first initial of that person will show up as a cue indicating what they're doing, what tab they're in, what features they're creating or maybe editing. So you do get visual feedback when others are in your document. So it shows you the where and what. It also indicates new features or features being edited. It does not show when you share with view-only permissions. An important distinction. Of course, you can't edit and you can't do anything to that effect, so you do not see the cues when sharing with view-only. However, when you share with edit permissions, as you can see here, I get the cues indicating that he is, in fact, in the document, right? So Neil's already imported the top casing. As I mentioned before, I had the bottom casing. Here's the top casing. We have both pieces. Now we're ready to start inserting, right? Now in this case, you'll actually see Neil inserting a new feature, right? So it gives you the cue not just that he's in this tab, but a new feature is being inserted. And you'll see now that top casing has been inserted into the Part Studio. So now we're working on the same part together. I'm going to go ahead and insert mine, right? We'll use a derived. I'll insert the bottom case. And again, we're working together on the same part at the same time. And this is something that we really haven't been able to do with traditional CAD applications, the ability to simultaneously edit. Now, a question that's come up, and it's a very good one. I noticed that social cues also show up if I have two browser windows open in the same document. And the answer is yes, absolutely. If you have two sessions open of the same document, or if you have a mobile session, similar concept, right? If you're logged in from more than one browser session or mobile session, it will show you as being a collaborator. Okay, so Neil's in the Part Studio. We've inserted both parts. Now we can start modeling. Now I want to communicate to Neil what it is that I'd like him to do. Which step, which part of the process do I want him to do? Which one part of the process am I going to do? And we can do this a number of different ways, but in a very effective way is what we call comments. I can add comments to features or just simply comments to the document in general, and I can chat essentially or communicate with others in the document. So right now, Neil's in my document. I want to communicate with him. Hey, can you model the top lid for this gear assembly? So what I'll do is right-click the face and say Add Comment. And what it's going to do is it's going to tag a comment with that face. And I'll say, can you model lid and make drawing? Right? I'll hit add, and now Neil can see not just that I've added a comment, that I've tagged it to the appropriate face. So now he gets the idea, okay, not just that can you model a lid, but can you model the lid associated with this face? And so it's a very easy way to communicate, with the users in the document. And you can see that it actually updates in real time. So you'll see I've got one reply, sure, no problem, right? And so now Neil can start working, I can start working, and we've both, got an idea of what it is we're gonna accomplish here. So comments are just an effective way to go through and actually communicate with those that are in the document, right? And now I can see Neil has started already working. I can jump into my part and start sketching. Okay. However, if I want to see what Neil's doing, if I want to see live what's happening with Neil, we can do what we call follow mode. So if you double click on Neil's icon, you're going to see his screen in real time. So as he highlights different things in the graphics or is just simply working, I can see what's going on. This is a great way to chat with others, or if I'm having an issue, hey, can you point out this hole, for instance, or this fillet? It's very easy for the person to move the cursor over it, and I can see in real time what they're trying to show me. So follow mode, again, a very useful tool. And again, you double click their social cue in the top right to enable it, and then it shows you their screen in real time. Now, when I left click out of follow mode, you'll notice that it leaves me in the exact same state that I was in when watching Neil. So it leaves me exactly where I was when Neil was editing his part, right? And so now you'll see that Neil has already added his extrude feature. And again, live real time. So we're both working in the same part. He's now added a new part. I am lagging behind. So give me just a moment here, and I'll sketch my end of this. Okay, so we'll draw a few simple circles. constrain them to the imported geometry, like so, and then the use command to convert a few simple circles here. Okay. So now I can extrude this, create a real simple flange. Okay. And I've created my part. So we've both built a part in the same part studio. So we're working together in the same part studio, whether it's various parts in a multi-part studio or we're both working on different elements of the same single part. You can work collaboratively, not just with part studios, but also assemblies, for example. So imagine that you had 20, 30, 100 different parts that you needed to assemble. You can have 2 or 3 different people in that document assembling it at the same time. So Neil's modeled his top lid, right? I've modeled my flange. Now we can work together in the same document, or we can work in different tabs in our own individual tasks. So for instance, you'll notice that Neil is now in a drawing. Okay, and he's editing a drawing. You'll even get indication here that Neil's currently editing this drawing. I can take the edit permissions from him, but we'll go ahead and let him finish his work in the drawing. But I want to point out that you don't have to work in the same tab. You can work, one person on a drawing, another person, like, in my example here, maybe assemble the finished assembly, right? So I can jump into my assembly and insert and begin inserting all my parts and mating things together. My big point with this is, again, one person could be working on drawings, another can be working on assemblies. You don't have to necessarily work together. So in this case, we can insert Part Studio 1. I'll insert it into my assembly. Notice all the parts come in together, right? Because they're all modeled together. When I insert them into the assembly, they come in together. And these don't move, so I'm going to group them, and we'll just group. Okay. So now they're grouped relative to each other, and the last thing I'm going to do is, of course, fix one of them so it doesn't move. Right? So now I've inserted all those parts into my assembly. Maybe now I need to insert other imported models, right? So I'm going to go back to import and browse, in this case, to the bevel gears, and we'll import those into the document. Right? So here are those bevel gears, and of course we can then go back to our assembly and insert those as well. Okay. So I can begin putting together my assembly, inserting the various components, maybe mating a few things together to get everything pieced together in my assembly, of course. Now, the big point here I wanted to make is, again, notice that I'm piecing together my assembly, maybe adding grouping, parts together, adding mates, fixing them, while Neil is also working in his drawing. Okay. Now, one of the last things that I wanted to point out here today is, let's just say, for instance, I don't want to work at the exact same time as another user. And by the way, you'll notice that Neil's now finished the drawing. If I jump into that tab, you'll see that he's created a simple drawing for his lid, right? His lid cover. So very easy for us to work together, and there's really no limitations in terms of the number of users. So you can have as many users in the document as you'd like, working on various tasks in the project all at the same time. One of the other things I want to point out about this is history. Now, as you're doing this, the obvious question becomes, well, what if a mistake happens? Or, what if there's some kind of issue and I want to know what happened, who did that, and when? Remember that you have history and that you can go back and look at individual steps. So I can see Neil made this change to the drawing at 8:18. I created a linear dimension, or I imported a document at 8:18 at the same time. So you can see that history is tracking not just my movements, but every change to the document by any user. And so you're getting a log, essentially, of all the different changes. A question: if you change view options, like make a part invisible, is it still visible for someone else? No, the view properties are not specific to a user. So if I change transparency, for example, it propagates to all other users. Um, so the view state, if you might refer to it as, um, applies to all, anyone looking at the document. Okay, so that's history, and the main reason I bring that up is you do have essentially an audit trail, the ability to go back and look at who did what and when. So you don't have to be too worried about if you share a doc that things are going to get messed up. Remember that you can go back in your history and restore back to any one of these points as well. All right, so one of the last points that I wanted to make, and that is branching. Now, in this example, both myself and Neil are working together collaboratively in the same part studio or in the same assembly. You can work together on the same task, or you can work in your own sandbox, so to speak, in your own branch. And the idea behind a branch is it allows you to create your own workspace and edit the model and do anything that you'd like without affecting any other branches, right? So it really just depends what your workflow is. But if you're trying to, maybe make your own version, or you want to make edits and you don't want, anyone else in it editing it, you can create a branch and you can have your own space to modify the model. It's also possible to merge branches, right? So if I create a branch and I do all these tweaks to the design and we decide we like it, we can merge that branch back into the main workspace. Now, branching and merging is its own topic, definitely something worth exploring. In fact, we just recently did a webinar on it, but we have lots of videos out there to discuss it. I just want to show you the option. So for those out there that want to share the documents but maybe want to work in their own space, you can create your branch. Now, branches, the important thing to keep in mind with branches is that you have to have an established version first. So I go to the versions manager and I save a version, and that's the first step, right? So I can call this the initial version. I can add description or some details if I want to, but you have to have an established version to branch off of, right? It can't be just the main and the most active. So now I have this established version called initial version, and under the gear menu, you'll see the option to branch to create workspace, right? I can select branch to create workspace and then name my branch. We'll call it bigger base. I can hit create, and it creates a branch off of that initial version. And the important thing here to remember is anything done in this branch does not affect anything else in any other branch, right? So you'll see now that I've created the bigger base, Neil has created the new lid design, and they're both variations off this initial version. So you kind of get that visual feedback as well. So really two different philosophies here. You can work together in the same document, doing this, editing the same features or different, parts of the part or assembly, or you can separate out your own workspace and do all the work yourself and then decide, okay, we want to merge things back together. Another great example of branching is just creating different design variations, a bigger base, a new lid design. So it's a great way to give you your own space. It's also another great way to build variations of your model. Okay. It's important to point out the social cues are workspace dependent, meaning I'm in bigger base. Neil's most likely in the new lid design. You'll see now he's in new lid design and I see his cue again. But the important thing to remember is because we were in different workspaces, I don't see his social cue. All right. So if I jump back into bigger base, I can go in and make my changes. If we decide that we like the changes that are made, we can merge them. And now this is again, a bit of a topic to itself, but you can take changes made in a new lid design, for example, and merge them with the main branch, right? And the way you do this is, again, under the gear dropdown, you'll see the option to merge. The important thing to keep in mind with merge is it's a from to. The best analogy I can give you is using a from to. So I want to take the changes from new lid design and push them to main. So I select main, I make it active, Then under New Lid Design, I choose Merge into Current Workspace. Okay, you'll notice the new lid design that Neil changed in that branch that was different is now merged into the main branch. Okay, so again, just trying to show two different workflows for using Onshape in a collaborative environment. You can have as many people in a document as you'd like. If you want your own workspace, create a branch. If you want to work together, you can do that too. So that is really what I had planned for you. I know a short webinar for you today. I do have just a few last slides. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the questions dialogue in the GoToWebinar panel. So going forward, if you're just getting started, we really encourage you to try Onshape in your professional work and let us know what you think. We really encourage you to give it a shot in a real life project and let us know your opinion. Use the feedback tool. There's a feedback mechanism built into the help menu. It's very easy to give us feedback, so we really encourage you to do it. If you know of anyone that might enjoy Onshape, invite them. There's an invite dialog, a little button in the documents page where you can invite others to Onshape. And of course, what we talked about here today, sharing your document. If you haven't yet, please share your document. It's very easy to do, and then you get all the benefits that we talked about here today. The real-time collaboration, the commenting, the follow mode, all of that is an effect of sharing your document. The last point I have is if you've been using Onshape a while, maybe you're interested in meeting local users. We'd love to help you establish a local user group. So if you're interested in establishing a local user group, let us know. We'd love to help you out. So that's what I wanted to show you here today. Again, I'm going to stick around and answer any questions. But that's it, everyone. Thank you.